Okay, so we now have high-risk strategy, I think, fellas. A very slick, interactive session from our three strategy geniuses, Ben, Nick, and Christian, who are going to rattle through pretty quickly their view on what fads, trends, and future trends might look like, and get you to vote. Ben will talk through detail of how that's going to work, but here you go.
Hello, everyone. I've been to loads of these seminars over the years, so I know what it's like. You've had a break, checking emails, you're thinking, what have I got to do when I get back to the office, that kind of thing. So we thought we'd do something a little bit different. Myself, Nick and Christian have each picked something that we think is a fad. We've got 2 minutes each to convince you that it is a fad, and then at the end of that, we will get you all to vote by a show of hands as to who you believe the most. After that, we'll then go on to do a trend and then a future trend. So it is going to be short, sharp sprints in terms of how we're going to approach it. So I'm up first. So I'm going to talk about online influencers. Okay, so I've got 2 minutes. What I'm not talking about is ambassadors, the use of celebrity to endorse your brand. It's obviously been used in TV and loads of other channels for years, not just mainstream celebrities as I would call them, but online celebrities as well, where there's clear partnerships. I'm talking about one-off engagements with micro-influencers on platforms such as Instagram especially. If you think about something like these social channels and the newsfeed people are scrolling through, to give you a bit of a fact, the average millennial, to use that sort of very broad term, will scroll through so much content in the 25 times that they visit on average a day, one of these platforms, it's actually the height of a Statue of Liberty. And your content is lost somewhere in that. If you're lucky, they might stop, look at it for 1.7 seconds apparently on average, and you've got a clunky product placement in someone's Instagram post for that 1.7 seconds to try and sort of get your brand across. Essentially, as millennials, they're a bit of a sandwich generation, okay? So the older generation, they very much, you use that celebrity endorsement, they listen to those sorts of things. They're not heavy users and sort of listening to these micro-influencers. All the signs are, obviously it's very early days, but the younger generation, they're quite conscious of society, environment, things like that. They're actually turning their back on some of these platforms. So what we've got at the moment is a bit of a bubble in this generation in the middle of people who are actually hanging on the word of these micro-influencers. And at the end of the day, one of the things that we're all wary of is who do you want to associate your brand with? How are you meant to audit the profiles of literally hundreds of micro-influencers and think about what they're going to say next? Especially when you think of all the big brands that have partnered with the likes of Lance Armstrong a few years ago, more recently people like Kevin Spacey. You would have thought they were pretty safe bets, but obviously all of those things backfired. And the other thing in terms of online influencers is it's very difficult to coordinate the timing of when things go out. There's no ability to go out and suddenly do a massive PR campaign and say, oh, we've done loads of stuff with micro-influencers, isn't this, an interesting execution? But a bit like the old Spaghetti Junction, around Birmingham, at least here, although it's confusing, you can create an onward journey, you can get to where you want to. When you execute with these online influencers, it's very much one hit, boom, that's it. Can't create an ongoing conversation with these people very easily at all. But I will end on a bit of a silver lining. So although you're going to have all these micro-influencers producing all of this content, all of these assets that you might or might not be able to use in terms of them aligning to how you want your brand to be perceived, you do at least own that content, normally for about 2 years, to use however you want across all of your marketing, comms, etc. So I actually see the future of this as actually being a low-cost, very sort of cheap way of producing the huge quantities of content that we all need to push through all the things that we do, and do it in a very quick and efficient way. So that is my 2 minutes. So I'll hand over to Nick, who will convince you that his fad is better than mine.
Thanks very much, Ben. Hello, my name is Nick Graham, digital strategist. There's 3 things you should know about me. I love Charlton Athletic, I love making soup, and I also think that overemphasis on brand safety is a fad. And judging by your stares, I see I'm in good company here as well. So what do I mean by brand safety? So I don't mean the media quality. I definitely think that's a trend. Making sure your ad is viewable, making sure it's seen by humans is definitely the right thing. This assumption that content against brand safe context is, though, and I'll spend the next minute and a half telling you why. You may have seen a lot of articles this year, 2018, looking at buzzword being around brand safety, how it's such a scarce thing for brand marketers. And actually, when surveyed by IAS, a majority of digital advertising specialists cited brand safety as the second most concern this year, pipped only to the post by GDPR. Seems like such a long time away. But let's go back a bit and think about what the mobile phone is. Essentially, it's a reflection of us. It's what we decide to watch, what we decide to view, what we decide to listen to. Those of us who maybe read articles about plane crashes or watch pornography are still those same type of people who buy groceries online or donate to charities. And actually, when we think about this outside of the online space, how many of you really would block your advertisers from being shown against Love Island, or actually being blocked against the new biopic from Quentin Tarantino in the cinema, or even against Louis Theroux's latest documentary depicting kind of heroin addicts? I don't think many of you actually would ask your brand agencies to kind of pull your activity across traditional channels. And actually, when we actually look into the studies, there are no studies that show that there is a decrease in brand performance when ads are shown against non-brand safe content. If anything, there's more research to show that amending your message based on the context actually has more influence on people being more aligned to your brand than others. So I think these tools that are coming out, we should really be thinking about how to leverage them to help pick out the messaging we want to be against these contexts rather than just blocking. And finally, looking at maybe an over-reliance on brand safety, we could get to a time where actually we are influencing our press, and actually negative content is not being written about anymore. And to the sense that we become a nation that only consumes positive news, and how crap would that be? And that's why I believe that the over-reliance on brand safety is a fad. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Nick. Right. My turn for a fad. So I'm going all in on this one. It's blockchain. That's right. So for me, I'm going to try and convince you why blockchain is a fad in 2019. And you certainly heard the hype about it last year. So you probably heard about blockchain through Bitcoin or the likes of it. Last year it reached $20,000 per Bitcoin in 2017. And as a result of that, all of it came out in the press, and lots of industries started to think about the underlying technology of Bitcoin, which is blockchain. Bear with me here. I'm going to try and describe what blockchain is, or this is the definition. Blockchain is an immutable distributed ledger or a record of transactions between a network of participants. Yeah, I don't get it either. But I'll try and kind of explain it. Essentially, think of it like a database. So a spreadsheet, whatever. Every new record is added on to the end of that database, and it cannot be any of the previous elements in that database cannot be overwritten or discarded. So therefore, there's always that consistent and transparent view of data in that database. So quite valuable, and especially within advertising, we're starting to see there's some obvious use cases for it. The main one being media transparency, and specifically within digital advertising. Mark Pritchard, P&G brand chief, famously described the digital supply chain as murky at best and fraudulent at worst. But ultimately, so it kind of just does describe the need for a way to kind of be more transparent and actually ensure that we know where our media dollars are going and going to the publisher. But ultimately, I think, the A&A report opened the door between agency advertisers. It's now about the rest of the supply chain, so understanding how much an SSP is taking from your programmatic buy or the exchanges, etc. So transparency being the key resolution. We as an industry ran with it, as we always do. We kind of run with the latest trend, and the marketing group were one of the first out the blocks. They created an agency back in November last year during the hype of Bitcoin called Truth, the blockchain-backed agency. And they actually ran the first ever digital campaign on blockchain technology in March earlier this year, but it wasn't particularly scalable. It was one advertiser and one publisher, so great, it proved the concept, but actually in terms of scalability and the complexity of advertising we do in digital media, it certainly wasn't there. So to convince you why I think it's a fad, there's many hurdles that blockchain has got to overcome before it's kind of taken up by us as an industry. First of all is education. And actually, I really hope it doesn't become a trend, because I can't describe to my clients what blockchain is yet. But actually, certainly, the likes of the IAB are out there building sessions and lessons to help us understand the value of it. But also it's kind of understanding exactly what is going to be used for. So is it the auctions in our real-time bidding? Is it for verifying fraudulent impressions? Or is it simply just a way to settle transactions between us? Many people think it's the last one. And finally, the last argument is one of scale. So as I mentioned, we've got millions of impressions happening every second, and actually for the blockchain to do that, there's lots of technology that advances we need to overcome. Just to kind of back that up, Truth, that agency I told you about in October, so last month, their CEO, Mary, I met Mary, she's a lovely lady, amazing, knows everything about GDPR, fantastic woman, but she stepped down as CEO, and the CTO has taken over to focus on product development, which actually is probably quite a clear and substantial statement saying that it's not ready and won't be for a long time. However, just to kind of say, I'm not all against blockchain. We got the likes of IBM working on blockchain technology for advertising. So no doubt in the years to come, it will become available to us. But just for now, whilst all those hurdles are ahead of us, I think it's going to be a fad in 2019.
Next question. So, as an independent arbiter, we're going to ask you to vote on the fads. So, do you think that it's Ben's online influencers, Nick's brand safety, or Christian's blockchain? So, we can have hands up for online influencers. 5. Brand safety. Very good. Okay. And blockchain. I think we'll call Christian the winner on that one. Thank you, guys. Right, next round on trends.
Well, I've got to pick myself up after that. 4 votes. Right, so I'm going to talk trends. Value exchange is something that I see very much as a trend. So I think for ages, brands have basically always asked the audience for something. It's like, I want you to buy something, I want you to donate money, I want you to at very least remember my brand as a result of this advertising. We've talked a lot about making customers at the centre of everything, customer-centric marketing. It's been bandied around for ages. Let's be honest, it's not really been done an awful lot. And even where it has been done, we aren't using all the data signals that we've got and actually doing it as comprehensively as we could be. So what's happened is that post-GDPR, people are a little bit more knowledgeable. They are far less likely to just go opt in to absolutely everything during a user journey. So we need to be a lot more clever with our data. So this is actually a cafe in America, in a student town. And what they do is they offer free coffees to students who go in there in exchange for their data, so that local tech employers can target them with messaging trying to headhunt them. So it's a very, very simple value exchange where everybody wins. And I think very much we're going to see more and more of this sort of mutual way of working. The reality is, previously when people have opted into these sorts of things, we have bombarded them. We've sent them loads of emails. We've sent them loads of text messages. We have phoned them constantly. We haven't personalised things anywhere near as much as we should have done. We haven't done surprise and delight as much as we should have done. We haven't really sort of made our customers feel highly valued. So this, I think, is very much something that everyone is already looking at and trying to get right. And I think that what's happened is GDPR has just brought it into really, really sharp focus. Used to be a strategy. We do loads of online marketing. We drive people to the site. We get them to engage with the site, and we then retarget them. And that was a ginormous percentage of a strategy. Now, it is still a valid strategy, but it's not as scalable as it was. It's not as efficient as it was. People use multiple devices. They, using cookie blockers, etc. And so, although it's a part of what people should be doing, it used to be that was the online strategy. It can't be anymore. What you need is to be able to create those ongoing conversations because you've got that deterministic data, you've got the ability to speak to people, different devices, etc. The other thing about cross-device is it's not just about, oh, I know that this is somebody that is in market, I've got their data, I want to speak to them, etc. Got to pick the right mindset, the right moment, as well as knowing that they're in market. So, for example, if this person did have Wi-Fi signal, would you really be wanting to sit there and trying to get them to book their holiday on their mobile phone whilst they're doing their busy commute in London on a Monday morning? Obviously not. So what we've got to do with all of this is ensure that we are actually picking our moments as well in terms of these value exchanges. And that at this point, this is the perfect time to do a value exchange. Something quick, simple, you're not asking for anything in return, low barrier, not a lot of thought needs to go into actually making a financial purchase. And finally, obviously your brand health is really, really important in terms of your bottom line and how it impacts your performance marketing. So what we would be doing by bringing that value exchange, and what we're seeing more and more, people are bringing that value exchange obviously way before the purchase point. By doing that, obviously your brand perception improves because people think that's great, we've got something in their eyes almost for free from this brand, and they become advocates. And we all want advocates of our brands, but normally it's quite a small band of very loyal people. But actually by bringing this forward, that pool of people could be significantly larger. So that's why I think it's a trend. Nick, over to you.
Thanks again. Buzzwords, buzzwords, buzzwords. Remember that. Come on. Okay. Image-based search. Let's go. We all engage in visual search every single day organically, whether we're looking for a car in the car park, whether we're looking for our friends at a gig, or even looking for the low-fat yogurts in the aisle. Who knows who this guy is? No, me neither. About a decade ago, I was walking around Carnaby Street, and I saw a guy wearing a jumper with this guy on it, for an Adidas jumper, and I didn't know where I could buy it from. It wasn't kind of a new collection. It wasn't recent. I didn't know where I could get it from. And essentially, I just had to have it. It was the coolest jumper I'd seen at the time. So taking you through my little kind of customer journey, I tried to work out how do I actually find this. At the time, Pinterest wasn't there, but essentially I've done this. I recreated my customer journey. So on average, we search between 1 to 3 words in a search query. So the words I used to try and find this was Adidas cartoon, not so great, and also Adidas big head, again, not so great. So yeah, coming down to it, it's very difficult, especially seeing something for the first time, to actually understand what features are unique or distinguishable in something that you've seen. If only I had visual search, voila, I could have taken a picture of the jumper and not only would I have seen essentially where I could get it from, I'd have other recommendations for it as well. No wonder that Pinterest Lens has grown 140% year on year with this kind of consumer trend they've seen. And who remember these guys? What a burden on the tube trying to take a picture of something and then being like linked to no page because you're obviously underground, to the world now where everything is not only searchable but interactive. I mean, that's pretty much a big deal. Everything around you, connecting the offline physical world to the online world. So actually anything I see, not only can I get a link to search, but also I can buy it straight from actually seeing it. And I'm in good company as well with both Amazon and Google. I'm not sure Google very much like this logo here, but hey, ask forgiveness. So first from Brian Wilkowski, it's mentioned that being able to search around the world is the next logical step. Essentially being kind of taking a step backwards in terms of texting and typing rather than actually seeing. And the next one from Brent Rabowski from Amazon saying, it's perfect for shoppers who face two common dilemmas. The first one, I don't know what I want, but I know what it is when I see it. And the second one is, I know what it is, but I don't know what it's called. And for these two reasons, that's why I think visual search is definitely the trend for this year.
Thanks, Nick. Great. And the last trend that I think is happening for us is the automation of traditional media. So us as marketers, now we're very used to the automation of digital media. We know we can pinpoint audiences using data. We can adapt our messaging in real time. But the advent of automation in traditional media is certainly blurring those lines. To quote Mark Ritson, marketing was always going to absorb digital. It was never going to be the other way around. So us, with people with digital in our titles, perhaps we need to consider what that really means. And just to kind of back up the case for that, we've got out of home to start things off. So 50% of revenue last year came from digital placements in out of home. And just to make the case even further, we were at JCDecaux's upfronts earlier this year, and they are investing £25 million into their network next year, all of which is going into digital out-of-home placements. And they're actually looking to replace any of their best performing static placements with digital as well. So fantastic news for us. We can start to apply things about data and all those great things we can do digital in the out-of-home world. So adapt our messaging in real time, change things to get the right audience, and use data points to change our messaging. Second case for it is audio, or traditionally radio. This year was the sort of tipping point for radio, with 50% of people now listening to radio digitally. Not only that, 24.3 million of us are listening to digital audio for an average of 10 hours a week. So, it's pretty much already there for us. And there's new content being created as well. So 7 million of us are now listening to podcasts as well. So fantastic opportunity for us as advertisers. We can now buy audio programmatically. We can do all of those amazing things we do in digital. So dynamically adapt our creative, use data to target audiences, and at scale as well. The final frontier is TV for us in the UK. It's certainly tipping a lot more in the US, but actually Ofcom reported earlier this year there are now more UK subscriptions of Netflix, Amazon and Now TV than the traditional pay TV services, so the likes of Sky, etc. So our behaviours are certainly changing, and we're starting to see that the buying methods of TV change as well. So you've got the likes of AdSmart, Sky AdSmart. We've got 10 million users we can now reach and buy using data on TV. And of course, broadcaster VOD as well. So people are now watching catch up on their TV sets as well as their laptops and their tablets, and again, we can apply data. We can utilize messaging and adapt our messaging in real time. TV is the one where it's kind of looking at the cost point, the cost benefit of that at the moment for a lot of clients. But it's the final one that we're certainly going to see tip over. Just as a use case, some of the brands out there that are leveraging traditional media already in a digital fashion. Deliveroo is certainly one of the first ones. Last year, they were the first to use dynamic creative in audio ads. They used a technology called a million ads, and essentially they used data to change message in audio about the day, the time, the weather, the location, and even the cuisine to target individuals with a tailored messaging. They combined that with digital out of home, which had messaging around local events. So whether it was Wimbledon, it was festivals, or even new releases of TV shows. And actually, they even combined that with a new product, which was stalls out in parks, so people could get their Deliveroo ordered to the park outside when they're in the sunshine. So fantastic use case of how advertisers are already making advantages of traditional digital placements. So certainly a trend that if you're not leveraging already, something you need to start considering, and us as planners actually need to think about the integration of media. So how do we integrate our traditional or our digital media with our offline media, and how do we make the most of those data points? One of the things to kind of be wary of is getting caught up in direct marketing. It's quite easily to get down the bottom of the funnel when we've got data and audience planning. So making sure we're making the most of those channels and what they're best for, but actually leveraging the new data available to us.
So you know the score. Show of hands first for value exchange with Ben. 3, 4, 5. You're suffering here. Image-based search, Nick. Okay, and automation, Christian. 2-0, Christian. Nice work.
I accept pity votes. Right, so we're going to talk about future trends now. So things that could take off. They've got a few things that might have elements of trends, might have elements of fads to them, and a few things that will have to happen in order for them to really take off. So mine is automated payments. So obviously it's coming up. We're very close to Christmas now. And the shopping experience when you're going out into these busy shops is pretty horrendous. Obviously incredibly busy. You don't know where the product is that you're trying to buy. You've got to try and find it. You don't know if they've already sold out. And then you want to give this company money and you have to stand in a queue for ages in order to do so. None of it really makes any sense. When we think about how payment methodology has evolved over time, if you go way back, people used to barter stuff, and then we invented cash and coin, moving through into checks, and then the card came along, which was pretty amazing, and a lot of people then thought, well, a bit scared of this, still prefer my cash. Then contactless payment, exactly the same, and then suddenly obviously paying for using your mobile phone or a smartwatch, etc. It really, you think every time one of these sort of automated payments or different payment mechanisms come out, it takes a while for that uptake and for people to get confident in it. But definitely, I think emerging is going to be taking this automation to the next level. When you think about it, people want things to be frictionless as possible. They want a really easy, convenient life. So take the fact that Amazon bought Ring, you know, for I think it was over $1 billion or several billion. If you don't know Ring, it's a smart doorbell, so that, you know, when somebody arrives with a parcel, you can see them and talk to them and communicate with them using your phone. But this is going to get way more advanced. They've already started trialling so that you could either open your front door, so they can put the parcel inside your door, or if you don't like that idea, you can open your car and they can leave it in there if your car's parked on the drive. So at the moment, these things seem really scary. But as I said earlier, so did you know, the idea that my friend bought his brand new car using his smartwatch. Would have seemed incredibly scary not that long ago. Now, obviously, there's loads of payment sort of platforms out there, and now at the moment, it's a very, very competitive space. Google obviously got theirs. Facebook are saying we've got a wallet. Obviously, a lot of your banks all have various things that can link with your phones as well. The one thing that is at the moment is quite disparate. So if you want to engage with these different platforms, quite often they have their own payment mechanism. So as we're talking about future trends, there's dependencies on these things getting really taking off. And this one definitely is for that to bundle together a little bit easier to people. So there clearly, as this market matures, there's going to be some winners and losers in this space that will then people will just use as default. Obviously, automating stuff is nothing new at all. You know, the rollout of these self-checkouts has been huge. Initially, it was quite the low-level sort of shops, and now, though, you go into M&S, Waitrose, all the more premium places, it's there. It's not just automation, obviously, in the shop. There's automation of warehouses and distribution and everything else. Again, it's all making things easier, essentially. So this is a shop. I don't know if anyone's seen the video about this shop. This exists in the US, Amazon Go shop. As you walk in, you scan your Amazon app, and then there are cameras all over the shop. You just literally walk around with your basket, you put items in, it tracks the items you've put in. If you change your mind, you want to put something back, it will take it back out your basket, and then you just walk out the front door. And then it will deduct it from your account. There's different things being discussed as well, things like biometric payments. So obviously at the moment, people think, oh, it's facial recognition, it's a thumbprint, stuff like that. I've been to talks where people have said that the technology now is so advanced that they can distinguish everyone in the world just on how their elbow moves differently. So as you walk in, it will scan you and it can tell who you are just from your elbow. So obviously to make it safe, they look at your whole body, the way that you walk in the shop. You wouldn't even need to scan the app in the future because it will just know who you are. Your phone will be in your pocket. And that is why I think it's going to be a future trend. Nick, over to you. One of us has got to win this, not Christian.
AR. Okay, augmented reality. Under no illusions whatsoever, it's not quite meeting our expectations at the moment, is it really? It's still a bit laggy, a bit buggy. It's not quite matching what we want it to really be. But I just wanted to touch on two consumer trends that we're seeing at the moment. The first one being increased mobility, essentially people being out more, not in the homes, not in the offices, essentially being out doing more things, which has led to more on-demand experiences, the likes of Netflix, the likes of All4, ITV Hub. The second one being rapid rejection, and essentially the ability of diminishing attention and rapid rejection, which is all along the lines of people scrolling through feeds and basically being able to reject messages much quicker and much easier, which has led to more personalization and more customization. Remember those two things, increased mobility and rapid rejection. I'll come back to those in a bit. So AR Core, AR Kit, which is what I believe to be the equivalent of the App Store and Google Play with regards to Google and Apple, giving developers the tools and environment to be able to develop more AR experiences with users. That, coupled with the 5 large companies, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, basically fueling this vibrant kind of pipeline between developers and users to actually have more players in the market who are defeating some of those barriers that we had before around AR and somewhat VR as well. Had to quickly put an Illumiscape for a slide there. And looking at Industry 4.0, these are my slides with buzzwords. So there's two main things with Industry 4.0. The first one being 5G. And so mentioning back to the two main points I mentioned around increased mobility. 5G allows us to have those brilliant experiences on the go and opening up experiences such as web-based applications. So no longer are we having to basically download an app to get the AR experience. We can have it on the go via web-based applications. And the second one being AI. Another one for you. Essentially AI meaning that we can have more complex decision-making going on to create more tailored, personalized messages for us with regards to AR experiences. Eerie. No. Essentially, I was trying to talk over this. This is what we're looking at in the future as well. So at the moment, I imagine a lot of brands are thinking about, with the rise of digital audio, what does my brand sound like? Like exactly how do I get my brand tone out to different users? I believe very much in the near future, we're still going to stop thinking about what our brand sounds like and actually what does our brand look like with the help of AR. And with the help of this video, hopefully that I've convinced you all that AR is also the next trend in future. Thanks very much. A bit elevator there for you.
That's very good. Great. And to the final one of the day, and let's make it a clean streak, guys. We got this. My future trend, which is kind of, TBC at the moment, is artificial intelligence, but more specifically, assistants. Now, I've got a short clip.
The response, this is good.
Alexa, I need medical assistance immediately.
I added medical assistance immediately to your shopping list.
Oh, fucking hell.
Next up.
So, reality versus expectations of assistance so far, I think is quite clear. We're kind of hoping where these things are going. We can see the potential. We're all kind of adopting it at the moment, but actually it's not quite there at the moment, but lots of brands starting to delve in, needless to say anyway. The first foray for many brands is probably in the area of chatbots. Chatbots is fueled by the adoption of messenger apps. So large majority of us now utilizing either Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp. And the ability to basically create an interface in those environments using some sort of machine learning is now possible, although at the moment they're very much rules-based, and you kind of have to say, you have to prompt them the questions to ask. A good example is Just Eat. They've created a messenger chatbot which can actually provide you with inspiration about a takeaway, or actually tell you about what's nearby. I've got some nodding heads, someone's used it here. In the first 5 months, 15,000 people used it, but as soon as you type in, my food is late, then it triggers a human being. So it just shows how far that technology can go at the moment, and how much we need to kind of cut that off at the right point to ensure the user journey and customer satisfaction is strong. But the potential, I think Angie showed this one later, is the convergence of two technologies. So as I mentioned, instant messaging, the amazing world where we can send each other images, we can drop locations, we can upload a link to a website or a deep link, all that amazing interface that we have, an opportunity we use in between each other at the moment. And then the other opportunity of artificial intelligence. So leveraging those sort of functionalities of a messaging app, but at scale. So you don't need to have a huge army of people, instant messaging individuals. You can do it through machine learning and hopefully kind of understand context and natural language processing and those sorts of things. So that's kind of where we're hoping it's going to converge. It's kind of already on the way up. 50% of households this year predicted to have a home assistant, an audio home assistant like Alexa. And 37% of us already using voice tech on our smartphones, and large majority of us agree that it is quicker than typing, as long as they get it right. So the opportunity, I think, is huge. It's not quite there at the moment, but it's one to TBC. I think Angie showed a slide earlier about the utopia and dystopia. So finding applications that are of high interest and high impact will be how we tap into our customers' passion points. But actually, there's probably a lot of noise in the market where we're just creating chatbots for the sake of chatbots. So it's one for us to ensure we're using the technology in the right way.
Thank you, Christian. So for the final time this morning, could we have a show of hands for Ben's automated payments? Significantly better showing, Ben. Nice. Nick, AR and advertising. Wow, okay. AI assistance for Christian. Ben, your plea at the beginning worked nicely. Well done. 2-1. Thank you.